Showtime. Clancy closed his eyes and tried to remember the last time he felt comfortable. It may have been a Tuesday, or it may have been a January. He searched through the archives of his mind for any snippets of serenity that surfaced, but it was difficult for him to maintain concentration while the veins in his forehead pounded against his skull. It was the kind of pounding an angry cop with a search warrant does to someone's front door. With his eyes still closed, Clancy breathed deeply and held it until the pounding slowed down. 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 60 seconds, 80 seconds. He released his breath and frantically gulped air back into his lungs. Air was the only thing he had eaten in the past few days, otherwise he would have lost his breakfast right then and there. He wished he had something to vomit out so he could have felt some relief, but the only thing contained in his stomach that day was anxiety. He would have stapled his eyes shut if the opportunity presented itself. Behind the dark red capillaries of his eyelids, he was somewhere safe. He was nowhere. As long as his eyes were closed, he could foolishly trick himself into thinking that maybe he himself no longer existed. He imagined being a formless non-entity, no thoughts. In this imaginary world of non-existence, he could be nothing. If only he didn't exist, he would have no fears, no pain, no anxiety, and most of all, The sharp sound of knocking reverberated against the walls. Clancy was quickly reunited with the real world once again, as well as his headache. "Yeah?" he heard himself say. "Clancy, are you in there?" A woman's voice asked. "Yeah," he answered. "Good," said the voice. "The band before you just finished their set. You're going on in 10 minutes, okay?" "Yeah," said Clancy. It wasn't the only word in his vocabulary, but he wanted to get through the night with as little trouble as possible, and he knew from experience that people responded better to that word than being told no, even though he would have felt so much better if he had said it. The woman offered no reply other than the sound of her shoes clacking against the tiled floor, growing quieter and quieter, then nothing but the hum of the central air conditioning. With a deep breath, Clancy finally opened his eyes. He was standing in front of a bathroom mirror with both his hands holding the sink as if it was either going to fly up into the air if he let go of it, or he was 1,000 feet in the air and would fall to his death if he let go. The man he saw in the mirror looked like he was either in his late 20s or early 30s. His black, shoulder-length hair hadn't seen a comb since that morning, and it was several hours overdue for another one. He wore an army surplus jacket with a few pins and decorative patches on it. The pin by his left shoulder blade was a smiley face with its mouth sewn shut. On his right shoulder was a black pin with white letters on it that read, "Save the roaches, nuke the earth," and other such tchotchkes. When Clancy looked at the man's eyes, they seemed to stare right back at him. He closed one eye, and so did the man. He raised a hand, and so did the man. He reached a hand out and touched the cold, reflective, smooth surface of the mirror, and the man did the same. For a moment, both fingertips touched each other from opposite sides of the glass. Clancy splashed water on his face, and so did the man in the mirror. This man, Clancy finally realized, was his own reflection. This was it, the moment of truth. He couldn't put it off any longer. Clancy had to perform his first live show. He was a solo act, just a man with a guitar and a dream. He took one last look at the rest of the bathroom. Tiled floor, a single toilet, the very faint smell of humidity and cheap hand soap. He made sure he had everything he needed and closed the door behind him. Clancy was an exceptionally quiet person. Words simply escaped him most of the time. He had things he wanted to say, things he wanted to tell the world, things he wanted to tell about himself, but he didn't know how exactly to put his thoughts into the correct words. He knew it would cause him trouble if he just said what he felt like all the time, but couldn't just take a vow of silence either. Language scared him. The words he spoke never felt right. Music was the only language that allowed him to truly say what was on his mind. Notes were his words, and songs were his sentences. He worked at the water treatment plant on weekdays and would come home to his small apartment to play his guitar until he fell asleep on the strings. It was like writing in a diary, but instead of making a new entry for each day, he created a new song. He never actually recorded any of his songs, but he kept all of them in his memories. He had the nearly supernatural ability to pick up a guitar, play a song, and remember everything that happened on any specific date, because that was simply how his brain was wired. He only ever played the guitar for his own amusement, never in front of other people, so he was terrified yet excited to finally reveal his talent in front of a crowd. Clancy walked up to the stage. The curtains were down, and he could hear the event's host introducing him from the other side.
"Ladies and gentlemen, did you like the last band?"
Cheering.
"Then get ready, because..."
While the host did his spiel from the other side of the curtain, Clancy played a wordless prayer on his guitar. It was his way of asking whichever deity was feeling charitable that he didn't want to shit his pants and faint before his set was over. When it looked like the curtains were finally raising, he pulled a pair of sunglasses out from his shirt pocket and put them on. He didn't wear them so he could look like a cool rock star. He wore them because he didn't want the audience to see the fear in his eyes. He thought about every terrible possible outcome. Laughed off the stage, struck in the head with a brick, beaten up in the parking lot, driven out of town by an angry mob, or worse. He told himself he was being ridiculous, gave his face a couple slaps, and braced himself. It was now or never. There must have been at least 100 people in the audience, all looking directly at him. It was a small club, but it was a Friday, so it was filled to nearly capacity because of the weekend crowd. Clancy took out his green and purple guitar pick and strummed a note. Then he froze. This was exactly what he was afraid of. He would have been happier to give a terrible performance than no performance at all. Why couldn't he play? What was stopping him? His hands wouldn't move anymore, no matter how much he wanted them to. It was so quiet. He could hear his own heart beating, feel it pounding against his ribcage. It might explode. Somebody coughed. A moment later, he heard some audience members whispering. Then someone laughed. The laughter spread infectiously from wall to wall. The host looked at Clancy, then at the audience, then back at Clancy. Clancy was mortified. He hated himself for freezing on stage, but a part of him was relieved. At least the audience was having a good time.
"So that was Clancy," the host said to the crowd, laughter in his voice. "Let's all give him a round of applause. Great stuff, kid. Don't quit your day."
Clancy's guitar cut him off. One note, then another, then more. A scatter of sound, the first drops of rain before a great storm. Hiding behind his sunglasses and his guitar, Clancy played. The awkwardness vanished. No more laughter, no more whispers, only Clancy and his music. To the audience, he was the only thing that existed. Even the boozers at the bar put down their glasses and watched Clancy play, utterly transfixed. In his mind, Clancy was talking to the audience with his guitar. It was the only way he knew how to talk to them. What Clancy's guitar told the audience was, "I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm here anyway. Please understand me. Please listen." And somehow they did. The audience was fully engaged in the music and actually started texting people to come to the club to watch him play. Something about the music being played at that instant made the listeners feel compelled to drop everything they were doing and listen to him. The need to listen to Clancy superseded the need for anything else. Some people had tears in their eyes while others were walking closer to the stage to get a better look. No one had ever heard anything like this before. Was this a new kind of music? Was this magic? Was Clancy even human? One man jumped onto his own table and proclaimed,
"This man is a genius!"
Another woman started chanting Clancy's name, which then spread across the club faster than the laughing did from earlier. Soon, scores of individuals of all ages were chanting his name. He watched the crowd's reaction from behind his sunglasses, flabbergasted. He'd never played guitar for another living soul before, and this was what happened when he did. It was the greatest moment of his life, but he couldn't stop now, could he? What would happen if he did? Would they forget him? Worse, what if the crowd, as captivated as they were, became angry if he stopped playing? The crowd had nearly doubled in size. They could hardly fit in the building anymore. He had to keep playing, but now, he wasn't scared out of his mind. He wasn't even nervous. This was a feeling he'd never experienced before tonight. His guitar translated his thoughts to the audience, and it said, "I never want this moment to end." And he meant it. This was the first time Clancy really felt like he mattered. It was like being born. Clancy was alive, For the first time in his life, he was alive. The energy of the ever-growing crowd reflected the feelings in his heart. He was so caught up in the moment that he barely realized his time was nearly up, and he'd soon have to pack it up and make room for the next band to go on. With a heavy heart, he finished playing the final notes of his set list. His guitar sang to the crowd, "Thank you and good night." He didn't know what to do with his hands without a melody guiding them to the strings, so he clutched the guitar to his chest and gave a quick wave as he meekly bowed to the audience. He turned to walk away and was almost knocked on his back when he bumped into the host standing behind him.
"Where are you going, son?"
he asked with a grin, but his eyes were pleading more than smiling. Clancy mumbled at the floor, "Home?" His voice was barely a mouse whisper.
"The other bands broke up,"
the host answered with a chuckle. "You're the only act." Really? Clancy met his eyes once more. It didn't make any sense. This had to be some kind of joke. If it wasn't a joke, perhaps it was a dream, a beautiful, perfect dream.
"I couldn't believe it either. They heard you play your set and they all quit. Torched their instruments in the parking lot, so there was no point in trying anymore."
He placed a hand on Clancy's army surplus jacket in a warm, fatherly gesture. Clancy flinched, unsure what to do with the sudden human touch. Clancy breathed in and held it, looking around the room. Hundreds of faces, their eyes all on him, leaning forward in their chairs, hoping. To quit now would be a betrayal, not only to the audience and the club, but to Clancy himself. The night was still young, and he didn't have to be back at the plant until Monday anyway. Agonizing silence as they waited for his answer. "Okay," Clancy shouted, throwing his fist in the air, his pulse a frantic drum beat. He was electric. A wave of cheers crashed into him. The host wrapped him in a bear hug, lifting him off the ground a few inches, shouting, "Thank you!" so loud it nearly rattled his bones. Clancy's spine snapped back into place, a tingle racing up his back, puffing out his chest with pride. He threw another fist into the air. "Okay!" The roar of the crowd rattled the stage beneath him. The host grinned ear to ear and walked off the stage, calling over his shoulder, "Go for it, son!" Clancy stood against the crowd, gripping his guitar. It could have been a trick of the lights, but the audience swore he was glowing. He was a supernova, burning up years of silence in a single night. He raised his pick high, held it there, then brought it down onto the strings with the force of a planet-killing asteroid. Sound waves shattered the air, cutting through the audience's cheers. Clancy's guitar spoke again, and it said, "You want me? You got me." He didn't play the song. He detonated it. He was transformed, no, ascended. That man, built of flesh and bone, was no longer a man but a conduit for the very essence of music. The notes broke down the fabric of sound itself, transporting the audience into an entirely different state of awareness. Powerful enough to make them feel millions of emotions at once, yet soft as a gentle breeze on a warm spring morning. Wild, controlled, visceral, intimate. Everything. And all of it happened while they stood shoulder to shoulder, exceeding the max capacity of the club and making a mockery of the fire code. Hundreds of faces and hundreds more, some sitting, some standing, others even climbed on shoulders to catch a better view. The sheer magnitude of the audience made them look like a single writhing, many-faced entity. Clancy played his guitar. His fingers screamed in enraged obscenities as bloody slits wet from his palms. Salty perspiration oozed into his eyeballs and set his vision on fire. His sunglasses, fogged and dripping, reflected the mass of faces back at the crowd. His body was a cathedral of agony, but his heart excommunicated pain. How many hours had he been playing? 2 hours? 5 hours? Irrelevant. The clock was nailed to the wall, a corpse, crucified, a worthy sacrifice, stripped of all meaning. Blinking the sweat from his eyes, he glanced at the wall clock. 4 a.m. He laughed. The fanatical, wriggling ocean of humanity before him was his only priority, and he wanted them even more than they wanted him. As blood ran from his palms and down his arms, the music tethered Clancy to every soul in the crowd. From the drooling drunk slumped at the bar to the newlyweds dancing wild at the foot of the stage, he felt them, their memories, their daily rituals, their hopes, their secrets, their favorite colors even. One after another, then all at once. He was Clancy, but he was also Mary, Johnny, Justin, Susan, Steven. He was Robert the host. He was everyone. Somehow, though, they weren't him. They were enraptured by the music, swept away by every note. But they didn't know Clancy. They felt the music, but they didn't feel Clancy. As much as they loved to hear him play, none of them could feel him the way he felt them. To them, he was a musician, maybe superhuman, maybe godlike, but the man behind the sunglasses remained a mystery. Hours, days, it didn't matter, to Clancy or to anyone in the club. Time was extinct. The music had pulled them beyond it. Thousands of faces filled the room somehow. Reality itself was warped to stretch the tiny venue into the size of a stadium. No one remembered it being smaller. That version of the world had dissolved between notes. Time and space gave the fuck up and did whatever the hell they felt like. He was a newborn seeing his first sunrise, and he was on his deathbed simultaneously. The present no longer separated the past from the future. Before his eyes, the creation of the known universe, an unceremonious flicker of the final dying star. His music played in ancient Mesopotamia. It played while a stegosaurus took a shit. It played last night before Clancy even took the stage. The club was more massive than the earth and tinier than the head of a pin. Wait. Clancy heard his own voice from within. A lone whimper, barely audible, from somewhere deep in what remained of his own consciousness amidst the infinite voices within him. Please. His own internal voice again. Hundreds, millions, trillions of other souls and hearts roared within him, but his own timid voice stood above them all. It spoke to him one final time. Help? And it was too late. And that was when Clancy unraveled. The crowd watched in frozen horror as his arms peeled into corkscrew shreds. His body became a spiral, disintegrating. He became human spaghetti. His consciousness was pulled apart. His essence was spread infinitely across the entire multiverse all at once, atomized, split into infinitely small iterations of himself, losing all traces of sentient identity. Like so much smoke dissipated across the wind. Every second of every timeline of every inch of every universe. He was everywhere, but his own sense of self was gone. He was spread too thin. He was gone, extinguished. He no longer had agency. He simply was not. There wasn't even a concept of him. There never was a Clancy. It was Friday night once again. Not a new Friday, the same Friday. The one that never happened. The small club was busy as usual because of the weekend crowd. The bands played, and it was pretty standard. Some of them were good, but nothing particularly special. Same as always, same as it'll ever be.